What up? It's Kinachi. 3, 6, 9. And you know what time it is? Time for some more conspiracy talk. Yo, we could kick it off now.
Yeah. Kinachi. 6, 9. Slang it. 3, 6, 9. Big up. Hey! Kinachi. Get that dough. Black bag. We are the rich. In the pool. I'm sipping juice. She geeking. Drink food. She said, I'm too cool. Ice. Juice. Rice. Ooh. Nice. Moon. High altitude. She teeming. New. Bleeding. Moon. I stay sipping juice. Ice brain to the most higher. To the most higher. To the most higher. Prayers to the most higher.
Now, I'm not saying Hurricane Melissa was man-made, but me I say, people are pretend like certain technology not exists and certain devices not about, and you know.
We're here in Santa Barbara County, home to one of the longest running cloud seeding operations in the country. We've got some ground-based cloud seeding equipment right here, and we're gonna get to hear all about how it works and see it in action. Let's check it out. Cloud seeding is the most common type of weather modification, and it has many different techniques and applications. Today, it's mostly used to increase rain and snowfall, reduce the size of hail, and reduce fog at airports.
Traditionally, cloud seeding has been done from the air. So airplanes have had racks on them where these same flares are positioned on the airplane, and the airplane flies into the storm. So in order to reduce the cost of the client and reduce our carbon footprint, we've been able to station these on the ground. Now we can do this in places where weather permits.
Behind a barbed wire fence designed to keep away curious cattle, the cloud seeding gear awaits the right kind of weather.
So these are referred to as AHOGs. That stands for Automated High Output Ground Seeding Systems. We've got 3 primary components of our equipment here. The first is the control module that you see behind me. Then we have our actual cloud seeding flares. The cameras for security. It also helps us observe weather conditions in real time and make sure that all of the equipment is operating correctly during a storm. Inside these canisters are the flares with the seeding agents. The canisters are used as spark arresters, so they prevent sparks from reaching the ground. So we pull off the spark arrestor, you can see the flare inside. The ignition of the flares are controlled from the control module that's behind us. So the white triangle there is a cell service modem, and then the solar panel keeps us powered. Inside we have a battery and then a control board. So the control board interacts with the software. We're linked or synced with the software in Utah currently, and that allows us to fire or ignite any of the flares from that remote location.
Because of the lack of clouds and proper wind conditions, today is not a good day for cloud seeding at all. But Garrett and his team are going to light a flare for us anyway, so we can show you how it works. There's just one small problem. The battery in the control module died shortly before we arrived, but it's nothing a little jump start can't fix. After a little juice from Garrett's truck, it's time to set off the flare.
The primary seeding agent in this is silver iodide. Silver iodide is a simple compound. It's polar in nature like water, so there's chemical properties that help attract water molecules to silver iodide. It's also structured molecularly similar to ice. So it helps generate or helps spawn the generation of ice buildup, and then that becomes a hailstone or a snowflake that falls here primarily as rain. So one flare like this has billions and billions of potential sites for that water to congregate around. We'll launch them in sequences. We watch the radar to see when bands of the highest concentration of liquid water are passing above us in the clouds, and we try to target those high concentration pockets in the storm systems. We'll launch between 3 and 20 flares for a typical storm. Once the flare is lit, it takes a little bit of time to carry up into the clouds, and once it's up at the proper elevation, it'll take about 20 minutes to instigate the rain or the snow process. So overall, you're probably looking at about 40 to 45 minutes before you're seeing the maximum result. And that's why we're stationed miles away from our target area. So we have very specific targets that drain directly into major water basins, and we time these events to to correlate with rain above those intended targets. One of the biggest questions, or most common questions that we receive, relates to the safety of silver iodide. Silver is biologically inert, so it will not interact in a negative fashion with plant or animal life. Iodine is actually a critical building block of a number of hormones in animals, so it is safe as well. In fact, if you look at table salt or baby formula, you'll see iodine in its molecular form as an additive in those commonly consumed substances.
But what about other potential adverse effects? Could cloud seeding affect communities outside the targeted areas?
Sometimes there is a concern about robbing Peter to pay Paul. So are we benefiting California at the expense of Nevada? And the truth is that storm systems, when they move over off the coastline, only about 10% of that moisture is going to fall in the form of precip. And we're looking at increasing that to about 11% because we have about a 10% increase in the natural storm's productivity.
Built into the program are kind of checks to make sure that we don't come across anything negative. When there are high intensity storms, we won't seed. If the reservoirs are full, we won't seed. If the rivers are flowing a lot, maybe near flood capacity, we won't seed.
We hope, so the ability for us is to conserve how we use water and the ways that we store the water, and then layer on that efforts like weather modification and cloud seeding to help increase the rainfall that we do receive. It's very important that we take advantage of every opportunity we have to generate water in a sustainable way.
Let's learn about Earth's ionosphere.
What is Earth's atmosphere? Earth is surrounded by its atmosphere, which is the body of air or gases that protects the planet and enables life. The three major constituents are nitrogen, oxygen, and argon. Earth's atmosphere has 5 distinct layers. Let's look at each, from closest to farthest from the Earth. Troposphere. The layer of the atmosphere closest to the Earth is the troposphere. It begins at the surface of the Earth and extends out to about 12 kilometers. This layer is known as the lower atmosphere. It's where weather happens and contains the air humans breathe. The temperature of the troposphere decreases with height. Stratosphere. Above the troposphere is the stratosphere. This layer is where the ozone layer exists and scientists send weather balloons. Jets fly in the lower stratosphere to avoid turbulence in the troposphere. Temperature rises within the stratosphere but still remains well below freezing. Ozone layer. The ozone layer is a region of Earth's stratosphere that absorbs most of the sun's ultraviolet radiation. Mesosphere. The layer, where the air is especially thin and molecules are great distances apart, is the mesosphere. Temperatures in the mesosphere reach a low of -90 degrees Celsius. Meteors burn up in this layer. The stratosphere and the mesosphere are known as the middle atmospheres. Thermosphere. The thermosphere rises several hundred kilometers above the Earth's surface. Temperature is very much affected by the sun here. Temperature increases with height and can rise to as high as 2000 degrees Celsius. Nonetheless, the air would feel cold because the hot molecules are so far apart. Kármán line. The Kármán line is based on physical reality in the sense that it roughly marks the altitude where traditional aircraft can no longer effectively fly. Exosphere. The exosphere has very few atmospheric molecules, which can escape into space. Some scientists disagree that the exosphere is a part of the atmosphere and instead classify it actually as a part of outer space. There is no clear upper boundary, as in other layers. Exobase. The lower boundary of the exosphere is called the exobase. It is also called the critical altitude, as this is the altitude where barometric conditions no longer apply. Atmospheric temperature becomes nearly a constant above this altitude.
Harp real. It documented. It studied for decades. Them say, them research ionosphere communication, not weather. That are what them say. So, the real question no be if harp real. The real question is how much technology capabilities do they possess, and how much of this technology exists that the public does not understand. You see what I say?
Scientists in Dubai can now literally modify their weather. This technology could change the world as we know it, but will controlling the weather be used for good or for evil? In July of 2021, the United Arab Emirates National Center of Meteorology released a video showing a rainstorm that had been created using weather-modifying technology. How did they make it rain in the desert, you might ask? Scientists in Dubai used high-powered lasers and other advanced technology that were mounted to drones to make the rain fall from the desert sky. It should come as no surprise that one of the world's wealthiest cities would need a lot of resources, and the fact that Dubai resides in the desert with no source of fresh water nearby means that H2O is a hot commodity, both literally and figuratively. The city of 3.4 million residents receives around 15 million tourists, but only about 4 inches of rainfall every year. In order to support its own population and the booming tourism industry, Dubai needs to import a lot of goods. This is especially true for food and water. Being in the desert with very little rainfall isn't just a problem for obtaining water, but without the vital resource, crops are hard to grow as well. So how does Dubai plan to overcome the problem? By making their own rain using drones. The weather isn't very kind in Dubai as the sandstorms can reach a speed of 62 miles per hour. This means tiny grains of sand are whipped against buildings and anyone stuck outside at the speed of a car driving on the highway. Also, since the land the city sits on is not solid rock, the engineers of Dubai have had to come up with some unique solutions to construction problems. In fact, the skyscrapers in the city are held up by more friction than by traditional methods of building into the bedrock. They've even terraformed the region by building a palm tree-shaped island that's covered with luxury homes and resorts. To construct the island, the United Arab Emirates dredged up enough sand from the seafloor to encircle the earth 3 times. But regardless of how much terraforming or engineering is done in Dubai, water scarcity is the biggest problem of all. Yet, scientists have found a way to manifest clouds and rain using artificial means. Is this safe? We'll let you be the judge. In 2017, researchers at the University of Reading were awarded $1.5 million to fund their rain enhancement science, but that is nothing compared to the $15 million that the United Arab Emirates has invested in what they've called their quest to ensure water security. The University of Reading project to create more rain in Dubai used a mix of science, climate research, and drones. Rain is caused by the water vapor in the clouds condensing and forming droplets that are large enough to fall to the ground. The scientists in Dubai are causing this process to happen artificially. The premise behind their experiment is that if they can bombard an already existing cloud with electricity to cause the tiny water droplets to attract one another, they can make it rain. This is what happened in the video posted by the United Arab Emirates National Center of Meteorology. To be fair, this was a short burst of rain, but by zapping the clouds with electricity from drones, scientists took the first steps towards bringing rain to the desert. However, to truly control the weather and provide enough rain to ensure Dubai has water security, there are a few problems that scientists still need to overcome. For instance, using drones to zap rain out of the clouds seems to work great, unless there are no clouds in the sky. And since Dubai is rarely cloudy, this is a problem. But scientists have found a solution to this problem as well. If they can make their own clouds, then that's another part of the weather they can control. The crazy thing is, researchers have found a way to do just this. However, the consequences it could have may be life-threatening. One simple but extremely expensive way for Dubai to generate its own clouds is by building a humongous artificial mountain outside of the city. This construction project would most likely cost hundreds of millions of dollars and take years to build. But in the end, the mountain could cause clouds to form. The way mountains influence rainfall is that when the air is blown toward the mountain, it forces the air molecules to ascend to higher altitudes. When the air rises, it cools and its volume decreases. This causes an increase in humidity and rain clouds to form. This is the natural phenomenon that has caused researchers in Dubai to toss around the idea of building a mountain to produce more clouds. Another more sophisticated approach is that the United Arab Emirates is looking into a process called cloud seeding. This is when scientists use salt crystals coated with titanium dioxide to make clouds. But let's be clear, there is something nerve-wracking about the idea of putting titanium nanoparticles into the air we breathe. In fact, the World Health Organization has warned that inhaling titanium might lead to carcinogenic problems. This is a complex way of saying that breathing in the particles could lead to cancer. This would be a steep price to pay to just create some clouds in the sky. Cloud seeding has become condemned by many scientists as there's no way to control the process or contain it. Once the titanium particles are in the air, they will be carried by the Earth's winds wherever they blow. Also, if cloud seeding works the way it's supposed to and doesn't cause any harm to the human body, it could lead to some other problems. The clouds that are made will not remain in one spot. This means that as the cloud drifts with the wind, they'll bring the moisture contained within them wherever they go. Once out of the desert, the artificial clouds may cause flooding in other regions of the world. So what Dubai does with cloud seeding would not just affect the United Arab Emirates, but its neighbors as well. And when other people are affected by the actions of a foreign nation, all sorts of political problems can arise. Which brings us to another problem with controlling the weather. The technology may not only be used for good. In the future, if countries can control the amount of clouds and rain that are present in an area, they could use the technology to create flash floods on enemy targets, or just by creating clouds in the sky, a military force could cover their approach by air. This obviously isn't what the technology being used to create rain and clouds is being developed for, but there is nothing to stop it from being used for alternative purposes if it falls into the wrong hands. And this is where just having the technology to alter the weather could be a problem.
No! Add AI into the mix.
Hold a strap tight, food still dry. Big Gus, lean with it, brethren.
Yo, my mind is blown right.
Respect, first if you look. Tight wise.
It's lifting. Move, go inside. Hurricane mash up the whole place. Watch out. Pushing hard now.
Hold it steady. Big wave. Finish line ahead.
Brownie pulling first.
He win it.
Within hours of Melissa hitting and impacting, millions of AI images and videos start show up, start pop up.
Okay, well, so start back with Betty.
Deep fakes use deep learning artificial intelligence to replace or to alter your face, video or voice in audio. Join us now to break down the potential impacts of this technology. Cybersecurity expert and Chief Executive Officer of Technology Solutions to Trevor Forrest, right? Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'll ask you the same question that I asked Ms. Marka when she says, I said, explain that, because I had no idea what we were talking about. What are we talking about?
Yeah, so what we're looking at, I mean, you've heard of Photoshop, right? Mm-hmm. Right, so this is the 21st, right? The 21st century version of Photoshop, where now you can take voice and make it sound like someone or like anyone, or you can take video and you can make a video of someone doing or saying something that they never said at a place they never were. And it uses AI and machine learning technology to do that. And all you really need is a number of images of an individual, or a number of voice takes, probably 10 minutes of uninterrupted voice, and you can synthesize the voice of anyone and place it on any face, or you can take the face of someone and put it on any body and have it say whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to speak a little louder for us, but apparently we have a video explaining what you just said, so let's see if this makes it easier for me, because I understand all of them.
Always.
I'm the done spots.
Always.
Let's see this.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
I could tell that wasn't real though, right?
So that
Fake videos they circulate, fake numbers they trend.
Weaponize information. Not weaponizing weapons alone, weaponizing beliefs.
Wow. What's this?
Yo, you see why you don't know we're real? Fear, it basically just do the rest. You see, in this a small island here, misinformation, it hit harder. One lie, it can outrun 10 facts straight. So, before we argue whether weapon, man-made, natural, this, that, over there so, over here so, make we argue and try find out who control the picture. What we see first. Now, let me explain our local but Tadawa Island get mixed up in all of this. And I'll elaborate more on why I go into these topics, as not to speculate that Jamaica is just vastly out there and on the minimum spectrum of the statistic of the global diaspora. Mainly, it has ties with a lot of things that goes deeper down the rabbit hole, that goes far beneath the surface of the iceberg. Let's go further into why I speak upon these topics. After quote unquote departing from the British Crown monarchy on August 6, 1962 and joining the United Nations on September 18, 1962, we became a part of the United Nations, supposedly independent and a sovereignty. Now, a lot of us know the CIA as the scouts of an elite and more powerful conglomerate tree of something deeper and vastly hidden. Others say they're the men in black. But how does that fit into Jamaica's theme? Well, that's a whole deeper topic that we are going to get into in the next round. Check out what these documenting evidence say on the matter to be discussed in the latter.
I agree with you, but you certainly make your case for the legitimacy of what you're doing very well.
Let's take a look at some of the things which Lewis Wolf had to say, and we'll let you comment ever so often on this, okay?
What, in the years that you've been publishing it, do you think are some of your most significant revelations? Are there some stories that even shocked you?
Well, I think one of the big stories that we were able to document in some detail was the whole scope of CIA activities, similar to what the CIA did in Chile, and which was documented by the Senate Select Committee, was the whole covert action program in Jamaica in between 1976 and 1980. And we did a great deal of research into that, and we discovered in many ways, a very similar program, almost a classic model that was followed along the lines of what they did in Chile, including three major categories: military, paramilitary activity, the use of propaganda in the media, and the third one, which was economic warfare, using the multilateral organizations, the International Monetary Fund and others, to withhold loans which had been promised to the Jamaican government. This is one example.
What are a couple more of the details of that? You particularly mentioned those first two examples of actual paramilitary activity the CIA was involved in Jamaica.
There was a fire, for example, that took place in Jamaica of an old people's home. I think 150 old and infirmed women, many of them blind, were living in this home. And as it turned out, the place burned down in the space of about 8 minutes, 7 or 8 minutes. It was discovered that the phone wires had been cut and that their exits had all been blocked. Even those who could see their way out could not get out. And that the means by which the fire was set was the use of a petroleum jelly, which was unavailable in Jamaica. This was one indication, among others, that there was outside help. Why would the CIA, you might ask, why would the CIA want to murder 150 old women? It was because it was an effort, part of a very large-scale effort to discredit the government in Jamaica, which was at the time headed by Michael Manley, the Prime Minister. There were images produced of Michael Manley in the media, in the Daily Gleaner, which was the newspaper which the United States, through the CIA, helped to support. And there is a good deal of evidence of that. There were images of Michael Manley showing a death mask. I mean, it was his face which had been somehow made to look like a death mask, although it was pretending to be a photograph of him. And there were many ways to try and discredit him. This is very, very similar, in fact, to what the CIA did to try and discredit Salvador Allende in Chile. If you remember, Richard Nixon instructed the CIA in a meeting, which was in 1970, in the White House, and there was a document in the Senate report, which is reprinted, and he said, "Make the economy scream." Those were his words. And that's, of course, what the CIA proceeded to do in Chile, and that's what they also did in Jamaica.
They also furnished a lot of munitions and assistance to the terrorist squads that were going around killing people in the cities and also in the countryside in Jamaica as well.
That's correct.
Well, John, you had a trip down to Jamaica, and you saw a lot of these things about Jamaica with your own eyes, right?
Yes, indeed. A very moving, a very interesting trip to me to see a target country at a time in the height of a CIA operation when I was completely outside. So there's no way that I could see the problem that journalists have always had when the U.S. government was targeting on a country in a situation, trying to destabilize it, overthrow, or manipulate the elections or whatever, of trying to figure out what's going on when you don't have access to all of the flow of cables and the discussions in National Security Council meetings and whatnot, or the planning. I observed that from published information, the CIA station there was quite large for that size of a country. It was huge, in fact. It was bigger than any station I knew of in Africa, although Jamaica was a fairly small island with 2 million people. That's typical of when the CIA has got a big operation going in a place. They beef up the station and beef up the offices back stateside. The tone and flow of articles in the Gleaner was, of course, as Lou says, definitely a chapter out of Chile or a chapter out of the Angolan operation. Every indication of a massive CIA operation going to destabilize the government, to make the economy scream. And in that case, I would say that probably someone got promoted for that one, probably several people.
Because Manley was run out of office.
Because it worked.
By legitimate.
Yeah, without a scandal, without an assassination, without the things that have caused the CIA so much grief. Manley, a champion of social democracy, of giving the people a piece of the pie, was thrown out of office, and an arch-capitalist was put in office. And again, there was minimal adverse publicity. Lew Wolf and the others were studying the situation and did publish about what was going on, but it was not published in the New York Times and the Washington Post, and the big television networks didn't do studies on it, primarily because even if the journalists of the big organs knew what was happening and might have wanted to, they really just, because of the secrecy, couldn't get the truth about what the United States was doing. One interesting thing was that the effectiveness of the liars in our government, the duplicity. When we formed the CIA, we committed our leaders to having two policies, as Lou says, the rhetoric, the public statements, and the truth about what United States policy is. So an interesting measure of presidents is how effectively they lie. Interesting discussions that occur inside the CIA is about lying. Would you lie? You're the DDO and you're going to testify to the Senate. And serious discussions. Are you going to lie? Because if you do, it's perjury and there's a chance you could go to jail. And yet, the organization expects you to lie. President Carter was one of the most effective liars I have ever watched on television and through the media. As a poker player, man, I would never go up against that man. He could look at that camera and say things that obviously he knew were completely and totally false. And I would study his expression and I could detect nothing except occasionally a little wisp of a smile that wasn't consistent with what he was saying. Like he thought it was funny. But one of his more classic...
tick, actually.
Yeah, well, the smile that I was referring to wasn't that. It was just a kind of like he was repressing a grin, like he thought it was funny. How he rationalized these things, I don't know. But one of his most conspicuous lies was when he sat down with Manley just a few weeks before the elections in Washington and told him face to face that the CIA, don't have the CIA doing anything to destabilize you or your government. We have no such program going, when obviously he did. And he pulled it off to the point where even Manley was troubled. Very effective liar.
For decades, whispers of CIA interference haunted the Caribbean. Now the truth is out. President Donald Trump has just declassified secret files, and what they reveal about CIA operations in the Caribbean will leave you stunned. The newly released JFK files confirm what many suspected for years. The CIA had a network of secret field bases in the Caribbean, including Kingston, Jamaica, Georgetown, Guyana, Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and other key locations. During Jamaica's politically volatile 1970s and 1980s, the rivalry between the Jamaica Labour Party, JLP, and the People's National Party, PNP, often carried rumors of U.S. interference. Now these files confirm that CIA field operations were active in Kingston during this time, raising serious questions about foreign influence in Jamaica's politics. In the 1970s, Prime Minister Michael Manley's PNP government leaned heavily towards socialism, aligning itself with Cuba. The United States, deep in Cold War tensions, viewed this as a threat. According to the files, the CIA's field base in Kingston actively tracked Jamaican political leaders, allegedly funneling resources to pro-capitalist factions within the island to weaken Manley's influence. The CIA allegedly funded opposition groups, distributed propaganda, and even attempted to destabilize communities tied to socialist sympathizers. One document reveals the existence of a CIA operative codenamed Awana 1, who successfully infiltrated networks across the region. Awana 1 reportedly built a web of over 20 informants, sending intelligence back to Washington in over 50 detailed reports. The CIA's surveillance stretched across multiple islands, reinforcing the U.S.'s determination to monitor any potential communist influence in the region. But the CIA's involvement may have escalated violence in Jamaica. The PNP and JLP rivalry turned Kingston into a war zone, where community clashes and politically motivated attacks resulted in hundreds of deaths. The CIA's influence destabilized local politics, deepened divisions, and may have even shifted election outcomes. When the JLP's Edward Seaga became prime minister in 1980, Jamaica's political direction shifted dramatically, moving closer to the United States and Western economic models. The revelations raised troubling questions. How deeply did the CIA influence Caribbean politics? Were some Caribbean leaders targeted for supporting socialism or independence? And most importantly, how much of this surveillance continues today? For years, people have speculated about the CIA's presence in Jamaica. Now the files confirm what many feared. The United States was actively watching and potentially influencing political outcomes in the region. What do you think? Was the CIA responsible for shaping Jamaica's political history?
Many of us know that the media is, for the most part, socialism, whether for business or for pleasure. It is flat out communication, and also many don't know. So let's let someone who's had first-hand experience in those fields to a degree explain what it is and what it does.
I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. Either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually, the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. And I would say our percentage planning that kind of data was 70 to 80%. We would go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true.
Now, let's look at what socialism is and why everything is so specifically orchestrated by them using this method as one of their strategies.
Socialism is an economic and political system where the community or state owns and controls the means of production rather than individuals. It aims for equal distribution of wealth and resources, ensuring that everyone has access to basic needs like healthcare, education, and housing. In socialism, Profits from businesses are distributed among the society to reduce inequalities. Critics argue it can lead to inefficiency and lack of motivation due to less personal financial incentive. Supporters believe it leads to a more equitable society. Socialism emphasizes collective welfare and decision-making, contrasting with capitalism's individualistic approach.
This is a tactic shared by all affiliates of the Protocols of Zion.
No mystery. There's nothing to do with espionage. I know that espionage intelligence gathering looks more romantic. It sells more deodorants through the advertising, probably. That's why your Hollywood producers are so crazy about James Bond type of thrillers. But in reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process, which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid of society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society.
And yet these people who've been programmed and, as you say, in place and who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept, these are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will revolt. They will be very unhappy, frustrated people. And the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. Obviously they will join the links of dissenters, dissidents. Unlike in present United States, there will be no place for dissent in future Marxist-Leninist America. Here you can get popular like Daniel Ellsberg and filthy rich like Jane Fonda for being dissident, for criticizing your Pentagon. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality. This they don't understand, and it will be greatest shock for them, of course.
Welcome to the Socialist Minute on the secret CIA program MK-Ultra, experiments which contravened the Nuremberg Code. MK-Ultra operated from the 50s until the early 60s and was the code name of an illegal human experimentation program to search for a mind control drug that could be weaponized against enemies and was essentially a continuation of work that began in Japanese and Nazi concentration camps. MK-Ultra started under then CIA Director Allen Dulles, continued under Richard Helms, and was overseen by Sidney Gottlieb, American chemist and spy master. Without consent, unwitting suspects were given high doses of psychoactive drugs, especially LSD, electroshocks, hypnosis, sensory deprivation. Gottlieb wanted to create a way to seize control of people's minds. First, you had to blast away the existing mind. Second, you had to find a way to insert a new mind into the resulting void. He didn't get too far on number 2, but he did a lot of work on number 1.
Are successful in their example of being able to provide, as a poor country, the best medical care in the third world to the whole population, because it's an inclusionary system. It's not like we have here, where you have this huge bulk of the population, marginalized them. But there, if everybody can have adequate medical care, if the schooling is adequate for all, and remember, Cuba has more doctors and more teachers per capita than any country in the world, and they have succeeded in these areas, and it's all state supported, which means people don't have to put money out for the medical care or for they of course pay the cost indirectly as a whole society, but they don't have to pay the bill in the hospital and so forth. And so that cannot be allowed to stand. It's a very bad example for the United States. So there's a very large mass of people out there who can look at Cuba and say, well, if they can do it, and on a per capita income of $2,000, $2,500 a year, where ours is $22,500 a year, what's wrong with our system? I mean, maybe we ought to consider an alternative.
That's why Nicaragua, Sandinista Nicaragua, had to be destroyed.
Exactly. They were a bad example, and that's why Grenada had to be destroyed, because any movement that comes to power with the idea of providing for all the people and of escaping the control of the United States and its economy, let's say the corporations and so forth, then that is bad news here in the United States in the upper circles of power.
So there you go. It really is that simple.
Now, just to throw back at Jamaica, the Jam Rack, in the 1700s, take a look at this vintage map of Jamaica, documenting Port Royal plus parishes. Part 4, I go deal with media accountability. Follow this now if you're ready for reason. Click subscribe and share before them shadow ban this. Fast, fast, fast! And remember, you just experienced conspiracy talk with Kinachi. 3, 6, 9, blossoming. May I go do some more research?
Panoramic roof, sledding in the cool.